Hey, this is the Daily Overpass. My name is Eric and I make apps. Now today, let's talk about why you should never let your team think that you're taking them for granted. All right, tell me if this sounds familiar. You start a new job as a software developer and everybody loves you. Everything you do, they're really happy with. They're just like, oh, this looks great, this looks awesome, this looks fantastic. And then a few months later, not so much. You say, hey, here's the work I've done. They go, ooh, can you change this? Can you do this a little bit there? Can you do that? Right? This is something that always used to bother me, right? I used to love the feeling of going to work at a new place where you're the hero. We did a video a few weeks ago called Be the Hero and Not the Resource. But when you start a new job, that's what you are. You're the hero. You go in there and you start fixing things or you start building things in a new way and everything is great. But eventually, it used to always frustrate me because I would start to feel that I was being taken advantage of, and then I would leave and then I would go do something else. And sometimes if I stayed at some place too long, my self-esteem would actually get a little bit low, and I think, I hope I can find another contract to go to. And then you start somewhere new and you're thinking, dude, man, I know all this stuff. You're further ahead than anybody else. So I used to always think that the reason this happened was because they just started to take me for granted, and maybe that's the case. But so here's what happened. So earlier today, I was talking with one of our guys, and it seemed like I was constantly saying, oh, can you change this? Can you do this? Yeah, that looks good, but how about you do this? How about you do this? And I realized I could hear myself. I'm just nitpicking at things. I'm just going, oh, you just change this, just change this. Whereas when the person started, I was like, oh, this is great, this is fantastic, a really good job here, and everything like that, right? And I had to stop and I had to say, look. You are doing a fantastic job. The reason I'm bringing up all these things where I wasn't before is not because I'm starting to find flaws in the way that you work. You have actually raised my standards. So the person who started actually raised my standards in terms of what was good, to where I started to look, I started to expect more and I started to want more. And I had to stop myself and just remind him so he doesn't feel the way that I felt at those technology jobs in the past, like where just being taken for granted, right? So there's two things I want to talk about today. First of all, if you have members in your team or you employ people, make sure to stop and remind them that you're not taking them for granted. That the reason, if that's the case for you, unless you are actually taking them for granted, then whatever. But the reason that you start to be a bit more nitpicky, you start to find these things is because they have raised your standard. As a developer, if you want your job to be easy, just lower the standards all the time. Just do a terrible job just right before they fire you. But who wants to be that person, right? So if you're an employer, do that. And if you're a developer and you feel like your job is you just don't like it anymore, they're taking you for granted, I would suggest finding another job. It's a really big boost for the confidence, right? Even if you're secure in your job, send out a few CVs, right? There's employee loyalty, and then there's loyalty to your family, to yourself, to your future, to your career. And you should always, I say this all the time, and I say it to my own team even though it's counterproductive for me, you should always know what your market value is. You should always be looking. There's nothing hurts with sending out a CV every once in a while. It allows you to keep it up to date and to move on. For those of you guys who are still working for people, for those of you guys who are your own app developers, send out a CV once in a while anyway, just to make sure you're still marketable, just in case things go sideways. So anyway, those are just my thoughts for today. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.